When I stepped into that shelter, drenched, starving, and half-frozen, I didn't expect the intake clerk to look at me like she'd just seen the most dangerous man alive. I didn't expect her to lock the doors, call in a code, or whisper, "We finally found him." Before I tell you everything, do me a favor, subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from so this reaches more people. 3 months ago, I was sleeping beneath the cracked concrete arches of the Harriston Bridge in Northcrest, digging through trash bins behind diners and convincing myself that the world had already forgotten I existed. My name, at least the one I believed, was Evan Mercer. I was 50 years old, a logistics coordinator who once woke up at 5 a.m., drank black coffee in a clean kitchen, and felt the quiet pride of a man who'd built something steady. But that was before my ex-wife Lydia married my billionaire employer, Grant Faulkner, and together they dismantled the life I'd spent 25 years building. Grant fired me on a Monday morning with a casual grin. Lydia took the house, the savings, the cars, everything except the air in my lungs, though she tried her best to strip that away too. My children turned their backs on me after she explained who I supposedly was. A thief. A liar. A burden. I lost my job, my home, my reputation, and then the parts of myself I thought were unbreakable. Within months, grief turned into drinking, drinking turned into homelessness, and homelessness turned into a kind of drifting where days blurred like ink in rainwater. On the night of February 18th, frostbitten and shaking, I finally dragged myself to New Dawn Shelter, a converted warehouse on the city's east side. I walked in expecting a lecture about sobriety and a thin blanket. I didn't expect a woman behind the intake window to change everything I thought I knew about my own existence. Her name was Marla Quinn. She had brown hair pinned back in a tight bun, glasses smudged from a long shift, and an expression that was tired but kind, until she looked at my ID. She lifted the card, squinted, then lifted her eyes to my face. Then back to the card. Then back again. Her hands began to tremble. "Your name is?" "Evan Mercer," she asked, voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, confused. "And you were born April 2nd, 1974? In Ridgemont, Vermont?" When I said yes, she stood so fast her chair slammed into the filing cabinet loud enough to turn heads. The men in the waiting area muttered, half curious, half annoyed. Marla crossed the room, locked the door, and pulled the blinds down with a snap. She returned to her desk with trembling fingers, picked up the phone, and spoke in a voice that sounded like someone trying not to panic. "This is Intake Station 5. Authorization Code 81, Foxtrot, 12. We found him. Yes. I'm certain. Subject 12 just walked through our door." She listened, nodded, and her face drained of color. "Understood. Locking down now." Locking down? For a moment, I wondered if I'd fallen asleep under the bridge and dreamed all of this. But the cold metal of the chair beneath me was real. The smell of bleach. The murmur of confused men behind the glass. Marla hung up and opened a drawer secured by a coded latch. From it she pulled a manila folder so thick it looked like it held a lifetime inside. Across the front, in block red letters. Archive, Genesis Program. Subject 12, presumed deceased. My pulse thudded in my ears. She opened the folder. The first photograph was of a baby, 3 months old, maybe, with a crescent-shaped birthmark on his right shoulder. I froze. I had the same mark. Same shape. Same angle. Same place. "Mr. Mercer," she said, voice trembling, "we've been searching for you for 32 years. According to every government file, every classified database, you're not supposed to exist. You died in a lab explosion in 1977, when you were 3. I laughed, hard, sharp, disbelieving. "You've got the wrong guy," I said. "I'm not special. I managed warehouse deliveries. My wife left me for my boss. I'm homeless. You're confusing me with someone else." Marla shook her head slowly, as if trying to absorb the moment along with me. "In the next 10 minutes, she said, federal agents are going to walk through that door. Some of them want to protect you. Others might not. Before they arrive, you need to understand something. Your birth mother didn't die accidentally. She was murdered trying to save you from people who wanted to use you for something you can't imagine." My mouth was dry. My hands shook. "And the man who destroyed your life, Grant Faulkner, has been searching for you far longer than you know." The room spun. Everything I believed about my past flickered like a dying bulb. The homeless man who staggered into a shelter that night wasn't just a forgotten ex-employee. According to the folder in Marla's shaking hands, I was worth more than Faulkner's entire empire, and far more dangerous. My blood, my DNA, my very existence held secrets nations would kill for. And somehow, I had lived 50 years without anyone knowing what I really was. 3 sudden knocks hit the intake door. Marla's eyes went wide. Mr. Mercer, she whispered urgently, whatever happens next, remember this, your mother died so you could choose your own future. Now you're about to make another choice. But first, you need to hear the truth about who you really are. Before I could ask another question, the door unlocked from the outside. A tall man in a charcoal suit stepped in, the kind of man whose posture told you he was used to being obeyed. His hair was steel gray, his jaw tight, his eyes ice-cold but sharp enough to slice through a lie before you told it. Mr. Mercer, he said, voice calm but edged with urgency. My name is Director Cole Harrigan, Division of Contingent Affairs. You need to come with me. I'm not going anywhere, I said, my voice cracking from cold and confusion. Tell me what this is. Harrigan glanced at Marla. She gave a tight nod. His biometrics matched. 100% confirmation. He exhaled like a man preparing for impact. Evan, he said, lowering his voice, your name, your life, everything you think you remember, it was fabricated to protect you. The Genesis program was shut down and buried, but someone kept searching. The wrong someone. He opened the folder Marla had placed between us, flipping to a page stamped with deep black redactions. Your real name, he said, is Lucas Arden. My stomach dropped. Stop, I muttered. My name is Evan. Evan Mercer. It was the identity assigned to you, Harrigan replied gently. A shield. He showed me a grainy photograph from 1977. A burning facility. Smoke tearing through the sky. Men in protective suits running between collapsing structures. The Arden facility explosion wasn't an accident, Harrigan said. Your mother, Dr. Alara Arden, set the fire herself to destroy the research before it could be stolen. Stolen? By who? The question barely formed before he answered it. A faction inside the Defense Directorate wanted to replicate you, use your genetic structure to build an army. When Dr. Arden found out, she smuggled you out and hid you with the Mercers in Ridgemont. They were chosen for one reason, they lived far from anyone who might recognize you. He turned the page. There was a letter. The ink shaky, the words written in a desperate, hurried hand. If my son survives, do not tell him who he is. Give him a normal life. My death will buy him that freedom. Alara. My throat tightened. Marla wiped her eyes subtly behind her glasses. But Harrigan wasn't finished. You were officially pronounced dead, he said. Until your assigned name, triggered a surveillance flag this morning. Why now? I whispered. He hesitated. Because someone found a piece of the original Genesis archive. And whoever found it is searching for you. I didn't need him to say the name. I already knew in my bones. Grant Faulkner. The man who had taken my job. My home. My wife. My reputation. My children. He had destroyed my life with a leisurely smile, as if ruining me was just another transaction on his calendar. Now I was learning he'd wanted something else all along. My blood. My existence. And the power buried in my DNA. I leaned back, dizzy, the room tilting like a boat in rough water. What do you want from me? To keep you alive, Harrigan said simply. And to give you the truth. He flipped to another set of documents, scanned lab reports showing diagrams of genetic sequences, helixes annotated with symbols I didn't understand. This is what made you valuable, he said. Your biology. Your resilience. Your cognitive pattern mapping. Your immune variability. Dr. Arden designed you to eliminate certain genetic disorders, but the military saw something else, a blueprint for engineered soldiers. I stared at the diagrams. This is ridiculous, I said weakly. I'm not special. I'm just me. Are you? Harrigan countered calmly. Think, Evan. Your entire life, have you ever been seriously sick? Ever had a broken bone that healed unusually fast? Ever worked for hours beyond fatigue? Ever seen patterns others missed? The memories hit me like a series of quiet explosions. When my whole family caught the flu, I didn't. When I cut my leg on metal at work, the wound healed in days. When we lost 2 warehouse planners in the same week, I took over their duties effortlessly, barely sleeping but never crashing. I could calculate supply routes in my mind that took our software hours. I'd always thought it was luck. Or stubbornness. Or being a workaholic. Now I wasn't sure. Grant Faulkner has spent the last 8 years trying to resurrect Genesis, Harrigan said. He bought biotech companies. He hired rogue scientists. He paid millions for fragments of destroyed research. Fragments that could only be completed with one missing piece. Me. Why did he destroy my life? I asked, anger slipping into my voice. He didn't know who you were, not until recently. But he did know you were in the way. In the way. The words burned. Evan, Harrigan said carefully, Grant Faulkner believes you're dead. And that gives us an opportunity. An opportunity for what? His eyes hardened, not unkind, but with a sense of gravity. To stop him. Permanently. A cold thrill shot through me. Not fear. Not confusion. Purpose. For the first time in a long time, something inside me flickered back to life. What does that mean? I asked. It means, Harrigan said, sliding the folder toward me, we're offering you a choice. 3, to be precise. He raised one finger. 1, we relocate you permanently. New identity. New country. Enough money to disappear for life. He lifted a second finger. 2, you join a closed medical initiative. Let our genetic team study you, not as a weapon, but as a breakthrough. You could help millions. A third finger. 3, you pretend none of this happened and try to resume your old life. I stared. That's it? Not quite. I waited. You mentioned choices, I said. 3. Yes, Harrigan answered. 3 official ones. I lifted my head. Then what's the unofficial one? His eyes sharpened. The 4th choice, I said quietly, finishing his sentence. The one you're not offering out loud. Silence. Then, a small, knowing smile. And what would that be, Evan? I leaned forward, the fire in my stomach no longer from hunger or cold. Faulkner thinks Evan Mercer is gone. But someone else, someone with a new face, a new name, a new background, could get close to him. Harrigan didn't blink. You want to infiltrate Faulkner Industries. I want to finish what my mother started, I said, voice steady. And I want him to know it was me. For the first time all night, Harrigan looked impressed. Marla whispered, this is insane. But Harrigan shook his head. No. This is exactly what we hoped he'd say. My world had burned to ash. But from that ash, something raw and sharp was rising. Not vengeance, something deeper. A reclamation. Then let's begin, Harrigan said. And that was the moment Evan Mercer died, even if no one else knew it yet. The man who walked out of New Dawn Shelter that night was already someone new. And the world that had tried to bury me was about to learn why that had been a mistake. The transformation took 6 months, 6 months in which the person known as Evan Mercer quietly died, and someone else was built from the ashes. Harrigan's team fabricated a death certificate, staged a body recovery, and generated dental records to match the fictional corpse. An unclaimed John Doe from a river drowning became my stand-in, identified through documents their department created with unnerving precision. A private memorial was held. Lydia stood beside Grant Faulkner, crying into his expensive shoulder as if the man whose life she helped dismantle had meant something to her. My children, who once begged me to stay home a little longer when they were young, stood stiffly by the casket. My son, Lucas, stared at the ground. My daughter, Brenna, shook uncontrollably. It should have broken me. But watching from a tinted car parked far beyond the crowd, I felt something else entirely. Resolve. The version of me they were burying wasn't the real me. The helpless man who lost everything? He was gone. The world thought Evan Mercer was lowered into the earth that day. In a sense, he was. The man I had to become next would require something more than grief and anger. He needed discipline, patience, precision, a mind sharpened by purpose and a face no one recognized. Harrigan's specialists began the process. First, physical reconstruction. My hair color was altered from russet brown to jet black. Contact lenses reshaped the color patterns of my irises. Facial hair disguised the angles of my jawline. They adjusted my posture through physical therapy, small corrections that changed how people read my height and presence. Then they built my new identity, Adrian Vale, a defense logistics consultant with a Harvard MBA, a resume peppered with international contracts, and a verified decade working with a private military firm overseas. His credentials were immaculate, his background airtight. They even developed old email threads, performance reviews, and contract histories for him. I practiced his signature until it became instinct. I learned his fabricated childhood in Sycamore Falls. I memorized the details of his degrees. I absorbed the temperament of a man who lived in distant hotels, solved problems with spreadsheets and strategy, and never had time for emotional entanglements. Adrian Vale wasn't a disguise. He was a weapon. And eventually, I became convincing enough to wield him well. 2 months after my death, Harrigan made the first call to Faulkner's HR division through one of their embedded contacts. The request was simple. Faulkner Industries needed someone who specialized in high-security biological transport, someone experienced, discreet, and ambitious. Adrian Vale, conveniently, was recently moving stateside. Grant Faulkner took the bait faster than I expected. 3 weeks later, I sat across from him again, except this time, he had no idea he was looking at the man he destroyed. His office hadn't changed, polished mahogany desk, panoramic city view, and walls decorated with awards he'd purchased rather than earned. Faulkner glanced at my resume, impressed in all the ways Harrigan's team predicted. Adrian, your references are exceptional, Faulkner said, leaning back comfortably. We're running a sensitive initiative that requires a steady hand. The previous director was, well, let's say he wasn't built for responsibility. He meant me. Evan Mercer. The man he fired and buried. I forced a polite smile. I understand completely. Some people break under pressure. He chuckled. If only he knew. Within a month, I had access to Faulkner's deepest secret, a revival of the Genesis program, now renamed the Echelon Initiative. It operated in the shadows of Faulkner Industries, disguised as a series of biomedical subprojects. Its team included scientists with obscure backgrounds, contractors with no public records, and a budget large enough to sustain clandestine research that should have been impossible. They had acquired nearly 60% of the Genesis archives from black market brokers. From corrupt former officials. From private collectors who traded in forbidden science as casually as others traded stocks. The missing pieces, the ones they couldn't find, were the pieces stored in me. My DNA was the original template. My biology the key to their reconstruction. Every step I took deeper into the initiative made it clearer, if they ever connected Adrian Vale to Evan Mercer, to Lucas Arden, they would dissect me faster than they would greet me. But I had no intention of being a specimen. I was there to dismantle what they had rebuilt. I spent weeks mapping personnel movements, copying hard drive contents, scanning encrypted communications using covert devices Harrigan's team provided. Every night I returned to my safe house with pages of intelligence that Harrigan's analysts devoured like starved wolves. But espionage wasn't the hardest part. The hardest part was staying away from my children. From their voices. Their memories. Their innocence. I wanted to tell them I was alive. I wanted to tell them their mother had lied. I wanted them to remember the man I had been, not the man the world believed me to be. But to protect them, I had to remain dead. Instead, I sent documents anonymously, bank statements showing Lydia's secret transfers from Faulkner, emails proving their affair had begun long before she filed for divorce, files demonstrating how Faulkner bribed officials to ensure I could not gain employment, screenshots of messages showing Lydia conspiring to paint me as unstable. I mailed them everything. No explanation. No signature. Just the truth. Brenna was the first to call the number I included. Her voice cracked with grief and anger. Whoever you are, she said, tell me where you got these. When I answered, disguising my voice electronically, she gasped. Dad? Dad, is that you? Dad, please, are you alive? Lucas is here, he knows. We confronted Mom. She admitted everything. Her sobs shredded me. We're so sorry. Please come home. I can't, I whispered. Not yet. They begged for answers. I had none I could safely give. Look after each other, I told them. Trust only yourselves. And remember, not every enemy is obvious. I hung up just as my voice began to break. My mother, Agnes Mercer, received her call weeks later. Harrigan's agents had told her I was gone, and the grief had taken years off her face in months. When she heard my voice, she didn't cry at first, she simply breathed out, shaky and soft. I knew you weren't gone, she whispered. A mother knows these things. They gave me a letter, Evan, she continued. From a woman named Ilara. She said you were meant to change the world. My boy, why didn't you tell me you were adopted? Because, I said gently, you're my real mother. You and Dad. You raised me. You taught me what love is. Biology doesn't make a parent. She cried softly. I listened until I couldn't without unraveling. In the meantime, Faulkner's initiative approached its final stages. The team was close, too close, to producing the first enhanced subject since Genesis collapsed decades earlier. Their samples were incomplete, unstable, failing at high rates. Because the missing structure was me. They didn't know that the man managing their shipments was the missing structure. They didn't know their greatest security threat was standing in their lab rooms, shaking hands with their scientists, complimenting their progress. They didn't know the ghost of Genesis was already dismantling them from within. One evening, while reviewing encrypted logs, I found a document Faulkner should never have possessed, an original Genesis behavioral file written by Ilara Arden. It described cognitive potentials, pattern recognition abilities, neural resilience, and emotional processing structures designed to protect the subject from manipulation. Reading her words felt like reaching through time to touch the hand of a woman I had never known, yet somehow loved. She wrote, "He will know loss. But from it will grow clarity. Protect him from the ones who see him as a tool. Give him the life they would steal from him." Her last wish. A wish I now had to honor. 2 weeks later, Harrigan informed me that the Justice Department had enough evidence for one of the largest biotechnical raids in United States history. They had warrants for genetic trafficking, illegal biomedical experimentation, a conspiracy, racketeering, a human endangerment, multiple violations of federal ethics codes. All that remained was timing. The agency wanted to strike quietly, to minimize risk. I did not. I wanted Faulkner to fall the way he made me fall, publicly, humiliatingly, unmistakably. And so, I delivered the final piece of information the investigators needed, a signed authorization from Faulkner himself approving the acquisition of restricted biological material from an offshore black market supplier. His signature was flawless. Because I recorded him writing it. When I handed over the file, Harrigan nodded slowly. "This will end everything," he said. "Good," I replied. "I'm ready." But deep inside, I wasn't prepared for what the end would cost me. Not yet. Not fully. The raid happened on a Thursday morning, just after 9 a.m., a time when Faulkner Industries felt untouchable, when employees filed through the lobby with coffee cups and quiet chatter, completely unaware of the storm gathering above them. I was in the operations wing, reviewing shipment validation reports, when the alarms sounded. They weren't the building's alarms. They were federal. A wave of agents in Navy tactical jackets entered through every entrance, lobby, loading bays, maintenance corridors, rooftop access. The building went into immediate lockdown. Chaos erupted. Scientists shouted, papers scattered, keycards deactivated mid-swipe. People ran in circles not knowing where to go, terrified of consequences they never believed would arrive. But Grant Faulkner, my former employer, my ex-wife's lover, the man who had crushed Evan Mercer beneath his heel, did not run. He was in his private office on the 40th floor when the agents burst through. I stood in the crowd gathering in the hallway, watching as they pulled open the glass door. Faulkner stood behind his desk, hands raised, jaw clenched. "What is the meaning of this?" he barked. His words dripped with entitlement, confusion, and fury. He never believed his empire could be touched. Men like him rarely do. Director Harrigan stepped forward. "Grant Faulkner, you are under arrest for the unlawful acquisition of genetic material, illegal biomedical experimentation, conspiracy to violate federal ethics statutes, and multiple counts of trafficking restricted biological compounds." The entire hallway went silent. Even though hundreds of employees stood there, it felt like the world had paused. Handcuffs clicked shut behind him. His expensive suit wrinkled as agents pulled his arms back. The mighty titan of industry looked like a child caught in a lie far too big for him to explain. But then his eyes found mine. I stood among the employees, wearing Adrian Vale's face, Adrian Vale's clothes, Adrian Vale's expression. For a moment, he didn't recognize me. Then he did. Recognition cracked across his face like lightning, followed by raw horror. His knees buckled. Agents had to hold him upright. He mouthed one word. "You." I didn't smile. I didn't nod. I simply watched him as the life he stole from me snapped back around his throat like a closing fist. As agents dragged him away, employees whispered in shock. Lydia wasn't there, but her absence didn't spare her. Within hours, her accounts were frozen. By evening, federal officers seized her assets as evidence of participating in financial concealment and fraudulent transfers. Her comfortable existence evaporated. The news broke across every outlet. Headlines exploded. Biotech mogul arrested in massive illegal genetics operation. Echelon initiative exposed, federal raid uncovers secret research. Faulkner Industries collapses under criminal scandal. I watched from a safe house, my heart steady, not triumphant, not vindictive, just resolved. A weight I'd carried for years shifted, but it didn't disappear. Some burdens change shape rather than vanish. Later that night, Harrigan handed me a secure tablet with a simple message on screen. "It's done." I expected to feel peace. Instead, I felt something quieter, heavier, the realization that destruction and restoration often look similar in the moment they begin. The next few weeks were a blur of depositions, classified briefings, and protected transport between secure facilities. Harrigan's team extracted every detail they needed from Faulkner's corrupted empire. Meanwhile, I continued working with Dr. Priya Menon, the lead ethical geneticist assigned to analyze my biological structure. Her team was careful, gentle in a way the Genesis scientists had not been when my mother fled the program. She showed me results that explained parts of my life I never understood. "You have accelerated cellular repair," Priya explained. "Your immune system recalibrates in real time. Your neurons form associative patterns rapidly, giving you unusual cognitive mapping abilities. Your genetics weren't meant for warfare, they were meant to heal." Ilara Arden hadn't created a weapon. She had created hope. And her hope had outlived her. Priya's research, built on purified fragments of Genesis, began to show breakthroughs in treating degenerative muscular disorders, certain cancers, and neurological collapse. Early trials on non-human models showed unprecedented recovery rates. "Your mother," Priya said softly one evening as we reviewed data, may have saved countless lives without ever seeing them. Her words sank deep. For the first time, I didn't feel like an experiment. I felt like a continuation of her courage. Over the next months, Harrigan arranged for compensations for those affected by Faulkner's crimes. Most didn't know my role. That was intentional. Only a select few understood that the blueprint Faulkner sought had stood beside him for months. But some restitution was far more personal. Felix, the homeless veteran who had dragged me to warmth on the night I nearly froze, was moved into a clean apartment. He received medical care through special funding. For the first time in years, he had a bed, a stove, and a refrigerator filled with actual food. When I visited him one morning, disguised as Adrian Vale, he didn't recognize me. But he did say, some angel must have decided I ain't finished yet. Marla Quinn continued working at New Dawn Shelter. She never spoke publicly about what she had seen, though she received an anonymous donation large enough to expand intake staffing, improve the medical wing, and replace the failing furnace system. Agnes, my mother, was moved to a better care facility on the outskirts of the city, with round-the-clock support and access to therapies she could never have afforded. She still asked about me. Harrigan promised that when it was safe, she would see me again. True seeing, without disguises or shadows. My children, though, that wound remained delicate. Lucas called several times, leaving messages on the secure line Harrigan provided. Dad, I don't know if you can hear this. I hope you can. Brennan misses you. We both do. We just want you to come home. But I knew better. There was no home to return to. Not yet. Maybe not ever in the old sense. The final chapter of this operation wasn't written in a courtroom or a laboratory. It came months later, when Harrigan invited me to a secure overlook facility tucked high in the mountains, far from cities, highways, or casual travelers. There, he presented me with a choice, not unlike the choices he had offered in the shelter. You've done everything we asked, Harrigan said. Everything your mother hoped. Now you decide what comes next. What are my options? I asked, though I already sensed the answer. 1. Disappear. We give you a new identity, total anonymity, a quiet life. 2. Continue working with us as Adrian Vale, consultant, liaison, guardian of what remains of Genesis. 3. Reveal yourself to your family. That one comes with risks. I looked out over the endless sweep of pines dusted in snow. I'm not Evan Mercer anymore, I said. No, Harrigan replied gently. But you're not just Adrian Vale either. I thought of Dr. Elara Arden and the name she gave me, Lucas. A name buried, hidden, erased. But not gone. My life wasn't defined by the identities forced on me, nor by the ones I shed. It was made by the choices I stepped into when the world tried to erase me. I'll continue the work, I said finally. But on my terms. And when the time is right, I'll find my way back to the people who matter. Harrigan nodded. You will. And when you do, they'll understand the truth. As I left the facility, the mountain air cold against my face, I understood something with startling clarity. I had been buried, broken, hunted, and forgotten. But I had risen, not as the man others destroyed, but as the man I chose to become. A survivor. A creation of courage. A force shaped not by pain, but by purpose. My name, my true name, was a story written across decades of secrets and sacrifice. But the world would know me by another. I am Adrian Vale now. I am also Lucas Arden. And once, I was Evan Mercer. I am the man who walked into a shelter with nothing, carrying 32 years of forgotten truth in my blood. The man they tried to erase. The man they never saw coming. And now, I finally know who I am. Thank you for staying with my story till the end. If it moved you, inspired you, or made you think about strength hidden inside struggle, please like this video and share it with someone who needs it. Comment below where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories of transformation, justice, and the extraordinary hidden in ordinary lives.